Welcome to the Embryo Adoption Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Mellinger. On this show, we explore the possibilities embryo adoption offers to families often struggling with infertility, though not always. Through insightful interviews and moving stories, we uncover the blessings of this unique path to parenthood. This podcast is brought to you by the National Embryo Donation Center, giving hope to those longing to grow their families. Now, let's get started. A triple blessing after a high-risk pregnancy and delivery. That's what we're talking about here on the Embryo Adoption Podcast today. It's brought to you by the National Embryo Donation Center, which you can find out more about at embryodonation.org. I'm your host, Mark Mellinger, and joining me today is NEDC mom, Cristina Van Alstyne. And Cristina, it's so good to have you here. It's an incredible story. And I want to start here, though. Tell me about your infertility journey prior to embryo adoption, because it was a long one. You actually did conceive your oldest son, August, through IVF, right?
Yes, we did. And thank you for having me. So, like many women probably listening to this podcast, the road, does this. And it's very long and arduous for sure. So I just always had a feeling since I was really young that it wasn't going to be easy for me because my heart's desire was to be a mom. Like that was what I wanted the most in this world. And, I had a very challenging upbringing. So I just was like, you know what? The odds are going to be that it's going to be difficult for me because everything's been difficult. And so when we got married, I also had very painful periods, very just always had issues. And so I just knew that at some point I probably would have, but I was like, maybe you're just being negative. You should just, enjoy it. We got married and I was like, literally that night, I was like, can we start having a baby like right now?
On the honeymoon night. Wow, nothing like starting right then and there.
Yeah. And he was like, this was August. So he was like, how about we wait till March? Let's enjoy the honeymoon just a little bit. So March 1st, I'm like, it's baby time. We started trying, and about 6 months in, nothing, was happening. And of course, it can take a healthy couple up to a year to conceive. But because I already had all these feelings about everything, I was like, I don't feel like this is right. So I went to a few doctors, and for years and years, I just kept being told that I had a low tolerance for pain, that this was normal, that I just didn't know how to handle my body, that there's nothing wrong with me. And I just wanted someone to listen to me, to listen that I don't think it's normal to pass out from pain every month. I don't think it's normal to throw up because of the pain. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And even as a young girl, I understood that, but it was really hard to advocate for myself when I was, 17, 16. At this point now, I was 24, and I just started doing my own research, to be honest. And then I came across endometriosis, and I was like, this sounds like what's happening to me. So I went to a specialist. I said, to be honest, I actually lied. I told them, I said, endometriosis, runs in my family. I just have a feeling because everyone in my family has it, which was not true. And then I also said that we'd been trying for a year because I knew that they weren't going to be concerned with me if I said it'd only been 6 months. You know what I mean? And lo and behold, that exact day, she was like, this is really concerning. Let's get you in for an ultrasound. Endometriosis can't be diagnosed just through simple ultrasound. Usually there's a surgery involved, but they could see it immediately. Mm-hmm. And because I just had so many issues, and that day was like the worst day of my life, probably because I was told that I had a 1% chance of conceiving on my own. I'm 24. I've been married for 6 months. Like, it was not great. Like, even if you're like, oh, I just knew it. At the same time, it was like, very devastating in general. But we put in a plan in place, and so we went straight to IUI. 2 failed IUI cycles. Then we did IVF. We used all our savings, as you can imagine, a newlywed couple, and the IVF cycle failed. We had no embryos to show for it. That was probably, the hardest loss for me, just because there was no hope. Like,
Right.
our money is gone, our money is gone, the embryos, there's none left. And that was really devastating. And so it took me a year. I decided I was done. I said, I don't know what God wants for me right now, but I'm just done, and we can't afford to do it again. So let's just go for it. And we took a break. And honestly, at that time, I was really angry with God in general, just because I just felt like, when is it going to be my turn? Like, when are you going to give me a break, And that year ended up being the hardest, but also one of the best years, just because it made me make peace with the fact that motherhood may not look the way you picture it, and I'm sure a lot of women listening to this will feel the same way. Sometimes things just don't go in the steps. You meet someone, you get married, you get pregnant, you have 3 well-behaved babies, and
No,
it just
that doesn't happen to anybody.
No, it really doesn't. And so I think that was kind of my time to just make peace with the fact that life just doesn't always go that way, and you got to pivot. And so I had to kind of think, like, do I want to be pregnant, or do I want to be a mother? Do I want a child, or do I just want the experience of being, seen as a mom? Because at the end of the day, you have to parent these children for a lifetime. It is not about the cute selfies with your tummy and all of the cute,
No, that goes away real fast.
And it's not that fun to be pregnant sometimes. So, I started to just think, like, all right, well, let's pivot. Like, let's do adoption. Let's do something else. And so we started making plans to go forward with adoption. And the day before we were supposed to put in the deposit, the agency shut down and stole like tons of money from people. If that's not divine intervention, I don't know. Because I was like,
yeah.
That's it. And that was all the money we had.
So you're broke again on your parenthood pursuit.
Exactly. And so thank goodness we did not. But that week, I want to say like 3 days later, I had this crazy dream. And some people are like, yeah, sure you did. But I'm like, no, I really did. I had this dream that God was telling me that it was time to do it again, that I needed to go to IVF one more time. And I get emotional talking about it. But I woke up the next morning and I told my husband, and my husband is not spiritual or religious, like, at all. And I said to him, I think I had this dream. I think we need to try again, like right now. And he said, that is so weird, because I also had this really weird thing happen. And so we both just decided, hey, Rosie, she's like licking herself like that.
Oh, your dog. Yeah, I wouldn't have noticed if you wouldn't have pointed it out. Adorable dog. It's an adorable dog, and I think people who are watching the video version will understand. Yeah,
They're
it
like,
could be
this
a lot
lovely
worse.
story and her crazy dog. Anyways,
Yeah, and
so
this is great. So he's not a person of faith, not
no,
spiritual, but he respects your
100%.
spirituality and your faith, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So what was he? He says that's funny. What had he been seeing?
Well, what you have to kind of know about my husband too is that he is like, he's gonna follow me to what like craziness I'm gonna take him to. I've never steered him wrong, but like when I tell you that I had to be like, we're getting married, and he's like, okay, like we're having kids, okay, it's not that he doesn't want to do it. He's just like very easygoing, and so he would never put whatever he believes in on me, and I would never do that for him either. But he is very much like, if you think this is best for our family, like I feel the same way, unless he felt very strongly the
Sure.
opposite. Then, so yeah, so I said to him, that is so weird that we both feel this way. So let's go for it. But we both had this intense draw to not go back to that doctor. We felt very dismissed by him. It felt very much like a factory of let's get these people in and out. And they never called me after our failed IVF cycle. They never checked in on us. Then finally, when I called and I said, hey, could we have a meeting about what went wrong and what we could do differently? She said, yeah, he can call you back in 2 months. I said, I just spent $20,000 with you guys, and like, I have no embryos left. Like, you think I would be worth a phone call,
All too common a tale, by the way, in
It
the
really,
fertility industry.
it really is. And this particular doctor, he was like a very high ranking guy. He like
Yeah,
goes to Congress to speak about IVF. Like he's like a big deal, but he just like doesn't care about the actual human connection.
right, right.
So we switched clinics. We went from this like really fancy, nice clinic to this like kind of hole in the wall. You would never even think of it, but it was run by if you're in Austin, Texas, it's called Texas Fertility or Austin Fertility Center, and it's Dr. Cavusi. He's amazing. But it's run by a dad and his 2 sons, and he is an angel, like unbelievable. Our IVF cycle, it worked. I had no embryos left, but it worked. We put in 2, and that was our son, August. And he's just like the light of our lives. And so that was our first pregnancy.
When was this, by the way? What year was August born?
He was born 2014.
Okay, so this little guy is now about 9 years old.
9. Yeah, he's 9. Is great. And he's like the best big brother in the world. He's just the coolest kid. He's like, I don't not say this lightly. Like, he is literally an angel sent from heaven. He's so like kind and pure, and just like he has a light, and it's amazing. I wish you could meet him. He's amazing. But he's actually the key to the rest of the story too.
Well, let's hear it.
Yeah. So when he was about 2 years old, we were picking out Christmas trees actually. And I saw a family with 2 kids, and I looked at my husband and I said, I just really want another baby. And he was like, me too. Like we hadn't really been talking about it. Because we were so happy with our son, and we were like, if this is all we have, like that's okay.
Sure.
But seeing that family, we both looked at each other. We were like, we should have a sibling, right? And he was like, yes. So, and then coincidentally, we went to go see Santa like the week after, and my son asked Santa for a sister. And I was like, okay, well, Santa can't bring you a sister, but we can try. So we went back to Dr. Cavusi and started the IVF cycle. And so at this point, it's been 2 years since. So it took us 3 years from the diagnosis of endo to have our son. So 3 years there. And then when our son is 2, we go back again. Um, and so I guess at that point it had been 3 years since I'd done an IVF cycle. And we basically had three failed IVF cycles, but we didn't go through all of them. So the first one was canceled because I had cysts and we had to do, the second one, when they went in for retrieval, or I was about to go to retrieval, and it didn't work. Like nothing progressed far enough. And then the third time, I actually went under, they went in and they retrieved nothing. I think they said it was 3 eggs, and they were such poor quality that he was like, I can't even try to do anything with this.
Oh.
And why I tell you that he is such an angel of a man is that a typical fertility place would have said, let's try it again, or they would have tried to get more money out of me, basically. But he sat me down and he just said, he said, you are young. As a doctor, I would like to tell you, these are the things we can do to get your egg quality up, and that we could try again. You've done this before, like it worked. He's like, we could, but if you were my daughter, I would tell you to stop.
That is a good doctor.
Yes. He was like, your body it's just what it is. And you're just putting yourself through this. He's like, $15,000 every time,
Oh.
he's like, I just think if you were my daughter, I just would tell you no. But he said, wait, here's the options you have. He's like, you could do egg donation, or you could have an egg donor, or you could do embryo donation. I had never heard of what embryo donation was. And I said, okay. And, the loss was devastating, but it wasn't the same, because my mind was already like, I had already opened myself up to adoption. I'd already opened myself up to other things, and I already had my son. So I didn't feel the pressure was on me that much. I was just like, okay, God, like, what do I do? Like, just tell me what I'm supposed to do. So that night I went home, I started just like Googling embryo donation, what that even meant. And I was like, this is so cool. So cool, because I was already open to adoption, but this was also a way for me to have another pregnancy. And I actually am that weird unicorn that is like really happy during pregnancy. I'm a very nice pregnant person. Ryan is always like, if you could just stay pregnant, you're just the most joyful, happiest. Like I'm not, grouchy at all. I mean, yes, you feel miserable towards the end, but like I'm that cute pregnant person with so I don't know. I just kind of was like, yeah, this one's really, really cool. And that's how I came across you guys. And then I started following a couple of accounts on YouTube that were doing the same thing. And so I just saw such beauty in that, because if I had embryos left over, the potential for life there was so beautiful, and you go through so much to actually have these little, bubbles. We call them bubbles at home. The kids call them little bubbles. They were like, we were little bubbles. Um, you know, it would be devastating to just like throw them away after everything you've gone through. So I just thought it was such a beautiful marriage of all the things that we had discussed and wanted. And so then proceeded so all this probably took another 2 years, because we started working with you guys when August was 4. And by that point, we've already gone through 3 Christmases where every Christmas he's asking Santa, I want a brother. Okay. So 3 wishes, 3 times wishing for a brother or a sister. It was always sister, but then later he was like, listen, buddy, I don't care what you bring me, just bring me a sibling,
3 wishes though. Okay.
3 wishes. Yeah. Didn't think much of that. Um, and then yeah, so everything went so easy working with you guys. We flew to Knoxville. You did everything. When we were looking through the parent profiles, it was like pretty quick. I think I went through 100 profiles, nothing clicked, and then the second batch that got sent to us pretty early on, I was like, I had a feeling about two families, and just that particular family, we just were vibing. We were clicking on a lot of levels. And it wasn't, if anyone's listening to this that hasn't gone through this or is thinking about going through this, it's not how you think it's going to be. You think you're like, and this isn't how we were, but imagine that you're like, I'm only going to pick PhD, Harvard educated parents, and they have to be the best looking, and they have to be, 6.5 feet tall, and da da da. Everything kind of goes out the window because at first you're just like, all right, how many embryos do they have? What are our chances? That's like the first thing. So that narrows it down. And then you're like, all right, I want them to be, smart, or, so yeah, maybe for me it was, yeah, I did want to be college educated. For someone else, it might be, they want someone in like the church or something. Like
Sure.
there's different levels of what you want. After a while, like you don't care about the looks part of it at all. I mean, my husband was like, just make sure that nobody is bald. And I'm like, what? Like, that's so weird. I don't even think they say that. And it's because his brother went bald when he was like 20. And so he's like paranoid about that. What is it with men and their hair? I don't know.
Well, and I have a son who is my son's only 22,
Yeah.
and he's already worried about going bald. And
Same.
yeah, I mean, if it comes from my line, it won't happen that early. I've just
You
gone
have
gray.
gray
I haven't
hair.
gone
No,
bald yet, and I'm pushing 50.
you have great hair. So he was, but then after a while, he's like, I don't care about that anymore. You start caring about different things. And these particular people, they were like, they love Top Gun. I'm like, yeah, we love Top Gun, like it's just, I don't know. But we had a feeling about this couple. And so we went forward, and you guys kind of have this thing where you're like, whatever you are open to defrosting, you have to be open to going through with them, right? You don't want to
That's right.
unnecessarily take them out of the freezer. And okay, that it is also very important to note that with our first failed IVF, we put in two, nothing worked. With our successful IVF with our son, we put in three, and we only got August. And we had just so many failures. So at that point I said, and you guys are very honest about how often you will defrost something and they don't all come out of the thawing process. So we were like, okay, thinking back, I probably would have said, hey, we have three chances to do this with this program. Like maybe we just take it slow the first time. I don't know, but again, God was like, you need to take out three. So I did. And I said three because obviously one is not going to make it, and then we'll put in two, and then one will be, and we were like, it's so amazing. So we did that. We took out three. On the day, I just will never forget, she came over and she said, congratulations, all three made it. And I'm like, that's great.
You're like, wonderful,
Like,
and uh-oh.
yeah, I'm kind of like, well, and Ryan and I like look at each other and we're like, well, that's what's happening. So we did it, and then I like crazy early. I think it was day 7 or 8. I think 7. Um, I was feeling so sick, but I was having these crazy dreams. And I knew, like, I was like, I know that I'm pregnant, and I know that there's multiples. Like, I know it. I called the lab and I said, hey, I know I'm not supposed to test this early, but I know I'm pregnant and I know it's multiples. And she was very funny because she was like, "Oh, tell me about that." She's like, tell me about this. And I'm like, "Well, I've been having these dreams." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, like this happens sometimes, you know?" And she didn't think I was crazy, which was nice. You know, fertility makes you a little crazy anyways. So you're just reading all the signs all the time. But I took a test like that day and it clear as day was like pregnant. But of course, a lot of things can happen. So we had to wait for the blood work. It's just, you have to wait just to make sure. Um, when they called me after the blood work, she was like, "Your numbers are so crazy." She goes, "It's not always a tell that the number is so high that it means that you have multiples. It can, sometimes not." But she's like, "I would be shocked." And then when the number doubled, it was astronomical. So she was like, "I would be shocked if this was not twins." So I went to my fertility clinic. They were doing all the baseline stuff for me. Uh, and I apologize that this is such a long story, but
No, that's why we're
you,
doing the
you need
podcast,
it.
is to tell your story. It's a great story. Yeah, no, keep going.
Yeah, you need all the little tidbits, you know.
Yes.
So I went in and this is the part that is just funny because I said to him, "Dr. Cavusi, I'm pregnant." And he was like, "That's so amazing." He's been watching this whole thing. And I go, "I know it's multiples. Like, I know it's multiples."
Because
And
he's
he's
doing
like,
your outside monitoring
"Yeah,
because you
he's
lived in
doing."
Austin, Texas at the time.
That's right. That's right. And so I was traveling to you guys just for, I think we did one mock transfer and then I came back for the
Correct.
actual day.
That's right.
So I got to work with my favorite doctor, which I think that's, I mean, your team is amazing too, but
Yeah.
it's so nice to have like a home base. And
Oh yeah, and
so,
you have a great connection with him. Absolutely.
yeah. And not that embryo adoption should be, your last resort, because I think if people knew more about it, I think maybe they would be more willing to go to it first. But I think a lot of women end up here after a journey. So
Yes.
I would recommend that you find a clinic or doctor that you really like at home, not someone that treats you like,
Like a number.
and
Right.
yeah, and that everyone works together and it just makes it so much more seamless. Like it was just a very pleasant experience from beginning to end. Um and so anyways, I came in, I said, I know it's multiples, and he's like, "Well, let's check it out. Let's see." And he looks at the screen and he's, doing his thing, and he got real quiet. And so for a second, I I'm like, my heart is like, "Oh my gosh," And so I just, a quick prayer, I'm just like, "Dear God, please let there be something. Like, I can't handle this right now." And I mean, I was like, "But the numbers have doubled." I'm doing all this math. I'm like, "The numbers have doubled and it's like crazy high. Like, it's gonna be okay, right?" And he's just quiet, quiet. And he goes, "Well, you're right. It's multiples." And then my second thought, I start praying and I say, "Please don't let me be John and Kate plus eight. Please don't let me be John and Kate plus eight." I was like, "Please don't give me like, I don't want to be like a freak show on the news. Like, do not, and not that anyone's a freak show, but you're like, I don't want 8 babies at one time.
Yeah.
Please, dear God."
Yes, I know. I know
Um,
what you're saying. Right.
yeah, yeah. And he goes, "There's 3." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "There's 3 sacks." And I start laughing so hard that I think everyone in the office thought I was having a mental breakdown. I probably was, to be honest with you, because I was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool." Like, my first thing was that I thought it was so cool. And I start laughing and I'm just like having the time of my life. And I look over at my husband and he is just like a
Stone
statue.
faced. Yeah.
He's a statue. He's trying to process everything. And I think he was also like, "Please don't let this be a loss." But then all of a sudden, "No, it's not a loss. There's 3. And he's just, and I go, "Oh my gosh, are you going to leave me? And he's like, what? Why would you say that? And I go, no, I'm not upset. And he's like, it's just crazy, you know? And so then I start crying. Then I start crying and I'm like, oh my God, like, how are we going to do this? And it's going to be so dangerous for me, and it's going to be so dangerous for them. And I've done all the research on like the possibilities of stuff, and I was just so scared that one of them would not make it. And I could take it, like I could take the loss of anything except for losing a baby, like,
Mhm.
and I just was so scared. And but it went like that for about 10 minutes. I kept laughing and crying and laughing and crying and laughing and crying. And it was just the weirdest, like I was so happy and thankful, but I was also like, of course, like nothing can be easy. And I think that's another lesson that I think God was throwing in there, was that a lot of times things, of course, don't go the way you imagine them to go, but also there was some lessons on patience, on whew, pivoting from things, deviating from the plan, and
Yeah, you had to
also
trust him with the bigger picture.
yeah, I mean, it is one of those like careful what you wish for situations, but also like this was exactly what had to happen. And like I look at them and I'm like, how would it work? Like if I only had two of them, you know what I mean? Like who would be the piece that could be missing? There is not, because they're just they're crazy, by the way, just to let you know. They're four now. And
Theo, Elliot,
they're
and Magnolia.
yes,
Your ADC triplets.
they are nuts in the best and worst way. Sometimes they are so naughty, like the naughtiest. Like when I tell you my oldest is like an angel sent from heaven, they are little angels, but they're like mischievous angels. So they're just very naughty, but in the best way. But we just have they're so different from each other. And we have Theo is like our calm. He's a lot like August in a lot of ways. He's a lot more calm. He likes to just be snuggled up, and he likes, he's our calm. He's our like steady. He we call him Theo Bear. He's like a big teddy bear. He's just that guy. Magnolia is our manager. She bosses everybody around. She's gonna be a tough girl. Like I tell her all the time, like, I'm pretty sure she's going to be president of the United States one day. I cannot promise she won't be a dictator, but I can try to guide her for a life of good. We will see.
The democracy may really be over if she gets in the White House.
Exactly. She's just like a strong, badass girl. She's very cool, and she's got these boys wrapped around her finger, especially her older brother. And so she's just the coolest. And I always just wanted one girl, and so that's been amazing. And then Elliot is our joy and our fun. He's the clown. He is exactly Dennis the Menace. If there is a wrong choice to make, he is making that wrong choice, but he's doing it not to be naughty, but he thinks it's funny. So he's got a smile on his face, making anyway. So they have all filled this different spot that our family was missing in really cool ways. And yeah.
Beautiful. And August probably loves being a big brother to all.
Oh my gosh. When he found out that it was three of them, he was like, wait, what? I mean, so he's 4 at this time, and he's just barely understanding, the whole process. But he knew, like, he helped me with my shots. We have videos of him like doing my shots with me.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Wow.
yeah, he was in it. Like, he wants to be a scientist, so he knows all of the science part of it, and he just thought it was so cool. And so when he found out it was 3, he was just like, "What?" He I'm telling you, a lot of people get nervous that their younger son will be jealous of the babies to come or anything like that. We never had that. He was so proud of his babies. He called them my babies. We would go to grocery stores and like people would stare, when they're little, people are like, "Oh my God, that's a lot of babies." And some people were not very kind, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's been times where people have like followed us with a camera, like recording us on their phone. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, why are you?
Now that is
But
that is weird. I don't understand that.
so strange, so strange. Like being at restaurants and just people literally eating their dinner, just staring at
Yeah,
us. So they're,
gawking, right? Like you're a
yeah, it's
zoo exhibit or
like,
something.
yeah. And I'm just like, what is so weird about this? Like, maybe we have more kids than you think, but it's, I'm just a family with my kids. Like, what is so weird about this? I don't
Right,
understand.
right, right.
And it's not
Absolutely.
that uncommon. I mean,
No,
triplets
it's
are not
really
that
not.
rare. No. But he was just always so proud. If anybody looked at us at like the checkout line or anything, he would be like, "They're triplets and they're my babies, and this one's my sister, and those are 2 boys." Like, he would tell, if he could have given our address out to have like visitors, we probably would have done it. So he's just been a joy in general. But you know, we feel our family's complete. I mean, of course, there's still times where, as a kid, I wanted 5. So I'm like, maybe,
Well,
maybe one,
you
maybe
have
one
time.
more. Yeah, I know there's still a little time. Ryan's like, no, no, we don't.
Ryan's like, no, you're out of time.
Yeah. Ryan's like, we're just getting our lives, he's like, we're taking our first trip ever in February. So he's just like, you wanna change that? And I'm like, I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So if you see me back there now, then you'll know what's
We will. Oh, would that be something? Hey, well, I do want to ask you,
yeah.
before we go, you've done, oh gosh, what a great job telling your story, and I
Oh,
love
thank you.
love hearing about your family. Do you have any advice? Because we have other families, younger families, or I should say newer families.
Yeah.
They're who have just had triplets or are about to have triplets. And it hasn't been 4+ years like it has been with
Yeah.
you. Do you have any sort of advice in terms of going through a high risk pregnancy,
Yeah.
and B, just navigating having 3 babies in the house to take care of at once? Any parting shots on either of those
Oh
fronts?
my gosh. So it's a lot. I mean, first of all, you have to kind of give yourself permission to grieve. It does not mean that you're not thankful for your blessings, that you're not thankful for what you have. But with every step of infertility, you have to grieve the loss, and you have to grieve what has happened to you every step. If you have a failed IVF, give yourself permission to say, this really sucks, this sucks. You don't have to live in the misery, you don't have to live in it, but it's okay to take 6 months, a year, or whatever time you need. Go to therapy, go see your counselor, go see, your church official, whoever you trust, talk to somebody. Give it room. It's okay. Like, I think we as a society are told that like bad feelings that are uncomfortable are not okay to have, and like you need those to get through the good times. You need those so that you can appreciate the good things you have. So I would say the first thing is you have to kind of grieve that you're not going to have the same experience as a person that had one child. You're just not. You got to let that go. You're not going to get these beautiful moments of like you're breastfeeding one child and you're bonding so deeply with this one baby, and it's all about this one baby, and they're going to get everything they need. It's just, you're one human. You can't, even with this incredible husband who I have, I mean, he was right there with me, like 50-50 in so many ways. I mean, there's some things he can't do, but
Sure.
you got to grieve it. And especially if you're having multiples and this is your first pregnancy, go through the emotions of it. It does not mean that you're not grateful. It does not mean that you're not thankful. It just means that the plan has changed and you've got to make peace with it. The second part I would say is to also understand that because you're one person, things are going to look different. I do know moms that have been able to breastfeed triplets and they did incredible. But I knew that mentally for myself, especially I had postpartum anxiety and depression, both pregnancies. That was not for me. It was not, what it did to me to force myself to try to breastfeed my first pregnancy was so traumatic and damaging to me that I already knew going in. I was like, I'm not going to put this on me. There's 3 of them. This is impossible. you know, Maybe not impossible, but I just knew my limitations. And I don't think there's anything wrong with just knowing that you're a human being
With
and you can,
limitations.
with limitations, and that you need to still be there and show up every day for these kids. And whatever you need to do that, just do that. And it's like, my kids' favorite movies are the Frozen movies. And in the second Frozen movie, Anna has a song called Do the Next Right Thing. That is always what I tell people, is that the only way to go forward through anything, but specifically challenging multiples, just do the next right thing. You don't need to have the laundry caught up. You don't need to have, a spotless house. You don't need to have anything. All you have to do is just do the next right thing and just survive it. That's it. Just survive it. And eventually it gets better. It really does. I mean, there's still moments where I'm losing my mind. Okay. I'm not going to say that they turn 3 and they turn 4. In some ways, the 3s and 4s are way worse than they
Yeah,
were,
right.
because they have attitudes and they're crazy and they fight all
Ye-
the time,
Right,
all the time.
right.
I mean, siblings fight, but this is like a whole other level. I think I spend the entire day like in Peaky Blinders being like, no fighting, no fighting. Um, but yeah, if you just take it one little thing at a time, and if you have a village, if you have people that you can guide and lead. We did not. We were in that very weird time of COVID. So at 6 months old, COVID hit. And I also had some family things going on. So we were alone. And so
Right.
I had postpartum depression and anxiety. And the only people I could really rely on were my neighbors. But I had moved into a neighborhood where we had 4 families with triplets. 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that?
And yeah. So my neighbor across the street, who I became really good friends with, her triplets were the same age as August. So they had already done it. They were telling me, you can do this. And she ended up having, she also, it was crazy. So her older daughter was the same age as our son when ours were born. So it was like the same thing, just fast forward in the future, And
That's
then
big. That's great.
yeah, and they had a bonus one after that. I was like, you weren't traumatized? You had another one? She's like, it was so healing. It was so great. So I had really good leaders to kind of guide me to know that you could keep going. There's a really good Facebook group for moms of triplets. You can find one. And then they also have one for like your birth year. So if you're pregnant right now with triplets or more, there's a group out there for you. And the women are very supportive, and they just kind of helped me through that. It's also, if you can't handle seeing stories of women that have not had successful pregnancies, then don't join it. Just to warn you, because there were a lot of moms that would come in they would say, I'm pregnant with triplets, and they would have a loss. They would have a loss during pregnancy, or they would have, very difficult journeys with the NICU, or they would have medical issues with their children. So I don't want to sell this as like defrost 3 eggs or embryos and hope for triplets, because it's not that. It's not this easy for everyone. And I am very blessed that I had a very easy pregnancy. I went to 35 weeks. I actually chose to give birth. Like, I was like, I could have kept going, and I was just like, let me stop this right now. Like, I can't see my feet were literally ginormous. And we had just moved into a new house 5 days before I gave birth. So I consider myself lucky. Only one of our kids had NICU time. It was only 10 days. They were, healthy. We had, some delays that are to be expected, but for all intents and purposes, like, they are typical children. Everything went really, really well. And that might not be the case for everyone. And so just know that if you join those groups, you might not see the happiest things, and it is what it is.
But what a great potential resource. And really, this entire interview has been a great resource, Cristina. I'm so thankful for you coming on and sharing your story. Thank you for giving others hope, and best wishes and prayers as you continue to try to get this crew under control, corral them. Maybe it'll get easier as you get older. And who knows, maybe we'll see you back here in Knoxville sometime.
Oh, you never know. I have these dreams sometimes, so I don't know, but thank you so much for having me. And, if anybody wants to reach out, share my information. I'm always happy. I actually made a YouTube video like years ago, and I still get people. Actually, I have it all documented when I found out that I was having triplets, and it's on my YouTube. And I no longer make YouTube videos, but I still get people from those videos messaging me about how much it meant to them to have the story heard. And so when you mentioned that you wanted to do the podcast, I was like, heck yeah. Like, I just want people to know about the options out there, that parenthood can look different. And I just want to tell whoever's listening to not give up, no matter what. If this is your heart's desire, there is a path for you. And this is a wonderful, beautiful process. And even if you're not religious, because, I think
and you don't have to be to go through the NEDC, right?
Exactly. Which we don't consider ourselves religious. I mean, I believe what I believe, and I feel like I have a very close relationship with God. And so for me, it was a very easy thing. But I think if someone doesn't have faith, and they're, looking into this, and they're like, I don't know, I'm just saying, just be open, because the process was wonderful. My husband never felt like he was being left out of the equation or anything. He never felt judged.
No, you'll be respected. Absolutely.
Yeah, he never felt judged. And there's a profile out there for you that might feel exactly the way you did. So don't give up, and just keep on going. And I'm so glad that I got to talk to you.
Me too. Cristina Van Alstyne, so encouraging. Thanks so much. Thank you for listening. If you want more information about the National Embryo Donation Center, it's embryodonation.org. I'm Mark Mellinger. This has been the Embryo Adoption Podcast.
Thank you so much for listening to the Embryo Adoption Podcast. I hope you enjoyed learning more about this life-changing option for building a family. Hey, if you or someone you know could benefit from embryo adoption or donation, visit embryodonation.org to get started, or just to find out more. Again, that's embryodonation.org. And don't forget to spread the word, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast app. Join me next time as we continue sharing inspirational stories of the embryo adoption journey. And until then, take care.